Hello, my name is Mike Hardman, and this is a conversation with Selectman candidate for re-election, Rick Hill, in the upcoming April 9th election. Rick, thanks for doing this, and thank you for your time. It's been a busy time, speaking of time, for the town and the Board of Selectmen. By account, the board has brought in close to $3.8 million to the town in grant money. How have you been able to accomplish that in such a short period of time?
Well, again, thank you, Michael, for hosting our conversation. The grants were part of our solution so that we do have so many projects to manage through. And we engaged with Pam McCarthy, our economic development coordinator, and she's just done a yeoman's job of going out and finding and securing a whole bunch of funding sources in terms of grants, et cetera. So we really appreciate her hard work. She's already obtained about $1 million in grants, and the balance of what you're talking about, there's a $2.5 million grant that we're applying for the sewer down on Park Street, and there's another $2 million grant that we're working on for development purposes in the town. We've been able to secure that money as part of the way to finance not using taxpayer monies, the projects, the necessary needed projects in the downtown.
Let's talk a little bit about the downtown. It's been blighted for a long time, but there seems to be a lot of progress going on there right now.
Yeah, there is. So there's some things that I kind of frame it as we got stuck. So there was there were things that became problems, and because they were problematic, they just didn't get the attention they needed. So when we came into office, our big focus was to push these things ahead. These are not our plans, it's really the residents of Stoughton's plans. We've gone to the master plan, we've gone to the economic development component of that plan. There's a Route 27 study that was also completed. There was the downtown parking management program. The redevelopment authority spent over $100,000 from a grant that they obtained to do a redevelopment plan for the downtown. And back in 2004, there was a community development plan, which was their master plan, their version of it back then. If you read those plans, it's the playbook for what's happening today. So it's no secret what needs to happen in the downtown. It just needs to be executed on.
But you have the ideas in motion. After years, we've heard the cons about building downtown. Downtowns are dead. Don't worry about downtown. Build outside and all that. But you've been able to solve some of the problems. Can you talk about what it would look like when you're done? The vision for downtown, and in your mind, because you're very involved in this and all that.
It's a great question. I think our planning board is certainly seen the vision by putting in the Stoughton mixed-use development zoning changes that have occurred in the downtown. So you've got retail space on the bottom and then residential space on the top. And we're seeing those pop up. So I think the Drake, just on the corner of Monk Street, was one of the first of those. The Malcolm and Parsons building, again, one of those areas where we got stuck for years. That building burned down 10 years ago. 4 years ago, the planning board had issued a 60-day window for the owner to secure a special variance, so that the special permit, so that they could pursue that project. But there was a parking issue. They needed 4 more parking spaces, and it was not the town's problem. And we can't get into the business of figuring out lending or selling or leasing parking spaces. So the owner, so we actually took it as an agenda item for the Board of Selectmen. We in the middle of last summer, held public forums to get the community's feedback. What do you think we should do in the downtown? We then had just gotten to the point where we were willing to take whatever action we needed to move that project ahead or not, and use whatever authority we had. We scheduled it for the Selectmen's meeting, I believe in first or second week of October. And at that meeting, the owner showed up. We had town planner was there, 2 members of the planning board, and they had worked out resolutions to solve the problems that were holding up the project. And I think about 8 weeks later, construction documents were issued and approved by the town, and I believe they're breaking ground in April or May to move that project ahead. So that's great news. But there are other pieces of the puzzle. The downtown, I see, is a big puzzle. And again, if you look at all the plans that have been done, there are certain places or pieces that have been identified that need to be addressed in order to spur more development in the downtown. So one of the pieces, of the centerpieces of the master plan, Mike, is green space. And so not new, the post office was identified in the plan as being a perfect opportunity to create green space with where that building is and the parking, et cetera. And a gazebo out there and bands at night, and so naturally the businesses that line 138 out in front of it, Wyman Street down the other side of it, those are going to become preferred spaces, and so they'll get developed, and it'll attract people to the downtown, pedestrians. It'll attract businesses to the downtown. So that, those are all positive things. The railroad station. We've just finished signing the documents on the purchase. So the papers will change hands on that by the end of the month. And right on top of it, we already have scheduled ads to go into the Penny Saver to hold a public forum for that building. And I believe the Armory, because again, we need a status on that building and we just can't let it sit there. So we want the public's input on it. But more importantly, the railroad station.
And people could get off the train and come to Stoughton and go to the events you're having there too. I mean, that's a perfect place for you not have to drive anywhere and just get off the train, go to a restaurant in downtown Stoughton, go to a play or see music or in the park, and all that. Sounds very exciting. It
is, and again, if you want to create traffic in the downtown, again, we talked about the theater, and there's all kinds of things happening there, but at least we were able to establish a dialogue with the owner, and Pam McCarthy, again, our economic development coordinator.
She needs a raise.
She really does. She's just terrific. With the town manager at the time, Mark Tisdale, we're able to open a dialogue where there wasn't a window one before. So there's a lot of thoughts about what can be done there. Our desire is not to be in the real estate business. So if we can figure out a way to make that all happen, those discussions are happening today.
And without putting a burden on the taxpayer too, because you're talking about bringing business in and got to pay taxes.
Exactly. Yeah. So if there was some investment by the town, the goal would be to get it back as soon as the building and the operation was up and running.
You see, in some of the debates we saw in the interviews, it seems to be a difference in slow down or go forward. How do you explain that, and why you're in favor of going forward? How does that work, in your opinion, better?
So, and I think in one of the debates, the question was, are you in favor of, or where do you prefer to focus, your energy? And I said, my opponent was saying, well, we need, big box stores and, the outside of town. And I disagreed. I said, we've got 56 storefronts in downtown. If those were all redeveloped, and again, part of the $1 million in grants we've gotten through PAM is to upgrade storefronts and signage. If that was all, done, then we'd be able to, the land down there, the land values would appreciate. And again, this is all about land use and rezoning. But those storefronts that are all down there, if they were 56 storefronts were now regenerated and earning and yielding the tax money that they should be, versus what's being yielded now, that would more than solve our money problems. And by the way, it becomes another jewel in the crown for the town.
Is it dangerous to slow down again and stop the progress of it?
Well, again, I keep talking about we got stuck, and that's exactly it. So you hit a hard spot, like the train station, and it's difficult to navigate it around. So what we've done as a board is divided up the responsibilities. So with the train station, for example, Mike Sullivan, who's an engineer, took that one, that project, and stayed with it, and didn't let it go. No matter what obstacles came forward, working with our town attorneys, they pushed that project through to the point where it's now happening. That has languished for years. So as one example, part of also things that we've allocated to Mike is the Park Street sewer and North Stoughton. We're currently working through Pam McCarthy to get a bio-ready designation for that area, which once we have, so I think the silver, gold, and platinum, we already qualify for that. And so now when that's an official designation, it opens us up again to more grant and development money to help that area up there.
It's also psychological too. You look at the new library, you get excited when you go in there and say, what happened? How'd this happen? And you look at, I live across the street from the school, and I see the school every day, and it's beautiful. And it seems like psychologically that has effect on growth too, because you want to be part of it.
Oh my God, yeah, the library is just so amazing. Pat Basiler and the library building committee and the trustees have just done an amazing job in bringing that project to fruition. Through struggles with managing budgets and things of that nature. So there's certainly a great archway at the outside of town, and it's as a gateway to town. And then at the other side of the town center is the high school. So, and I've been on the high school building committee since inception, and to watch what was done there is just it's just incredible. We toured that facility a week ago last Saturday, and it's so impressive. The contractor will tell you it's a 50-year building that they said is built for 100 years.
People are going to love the auditorium. Town meeting becomes a lot more comfortable.
Yeah. No, it looks like a Greek theater right now because there are no chairs, just levels and plateaus. But it will be. And the gym. The gym's amazing. It's like 3 times the size of what we have now. The auditorium, though, is a little bit smaller than the current one we have. So we'll figure that all out. But
it looks very nice when you look at the design of it and all that too.
Yeah, but functionally
it's
classrooms
beautiful.
Are bigger. The labs are terrific. The black box theater, the space for the bands, and separate space for jazz and vocal and things of that nature. Just terrific.
And that's a huge selling point for real estate too. If you move into a town and you go to if you have little kids, you go to the library.
Yeah.
And you see all the programs offered there. And kids getting older, you look at going to a high school. It's modern age and things like that too. While we're talking about buildings, let's talk about the public safety. Your opponent talks about remodeling the Freedman Station in the center of town. That's been talked about before. Do you favor that or taking a different approach? Would you consider what Sharon's done, building a public safety complex, which ironically was done by the same builders that did the high school?
I know. Every time you drive through there, because now they're building a new town hall. So they've completely rebuilt all their municipal facilities. It's an interesting question because this board originally wanted to take the first step to secure land, because 2 sets of previous chiefs of police and fire were asked to sit down and do 5-year projections and 10-year projections of their resources and needs. And they both agreed that their preference was to have one facility that would house both police and fire, so a public safety facility. So the challenge became at that point, and I guess whether you built that building or wanted to build a new fire station or police station, we still needed the land to do it. So we went in search of trying to figure out where would be the best place to site it, because that's been the saga. That's been the holdup all this time, is finding the right location for it. So we tried a number of different options. We worked really hard at it, and then we got to the special town meeting. We had a location. It just wasn't, vetted well enough, so we withdrew from consideration. But we had committed to having a site from the annual town meeting for the special. So here we are. We decided to step back. A sense of urgency is that the plots of land that will support that kind of a structure are few. So it's got to meet certain requirements. It's got to be so many acres. It's got to be have so much. It can't have so much wetlands, and it's got to be accessible. Our GIS system, which is the system that the engineering groups use that maps the entire town, has an application in it that does response times for police and fire. So we use that tool to generate a bunch of different spots that were places where we wouldn't have to do, wouldn't have to negotiate with a bunch of folks or town-owned land or whatnot. So we pursued a few of those, and then just got to the point where we said, after the special town meeting, we're going to follow the path that we followed for the high school, the process that worked so well for us. So we need there's an article in the warrant for the upcoming town meeting for us to be able to now engage in a feasibility study to go through the same vetting process we did for the high school. So what's the right thing? Do you replace the building that's there? Do you remodel it? Do you build a new one in place? Do you build a public safety facility? Do you expand the police department? There's all kinds of issues associated with every one of those options. You know, the police department has an issue with high water tables, and all the utilities are in the top floor. You'd have to relocate all the systems, HVAC and air and things of that nature. So again, there are complications, and the building's too small. So there are challenges.
Would you favor a dual complex? We had fire and police together.
My sense is that economically it works better, right? One building versus two. And but I'm open to any suggestion. You know, if the Freeman Street site works, then you know, you're going to have to buy adjacent real estate to make that really work. And again, I think that I'm guided by what the chiefs say, but you know, we've got a study that's going to tell us the best uses and the right direction to head down.
Another area you and your opponent, Mr. McCrisky, disagree about is the purchase of the old Randolph Savings Bank. Why are you for that?
Well, again, it's like I said, Michael, the downtown is a puzzle. So when you look at all the plans for the downtown, again, one of the prominent features that the residents voted for, hundreds of people participated in our forums that were done for the master plan, and again, focus groups, the consultants pulled all that information together and summarized the priorities for the town. Green space was a huge priority for the town in thinking it was needed to attract pedestrian traffic, shoppers, and of course vendors. People to open up, restaurants and shops and things of that nature. So green space, the biggest opportunity downtown was the post office. So the thought was to acquire the post office, to create green space in that area and relocate them. The Randolph Savings Space is kind of turnkey retail operational space that would accommodate the post office retail needs. There would have to be a separate accommodation for their trucks and their mail distribution, but we can figure that out. So that was one option. But in addition to that, it could be commercial space. It could be, annex for the town hall. There's certainly, the town hall's kind of busting at the seams. I'm not, an advocate of continuing to buy municipal space and take things off the tax rolls, but it's something to consider about. And we talked about using it as incubator space, an innovation space for small startup experimental businesses, and that's kind of a common thing that's happening these days in cities and towns. So and again, we bought 33 parking spaces, and parking is a need in the downtown. So at the time, again, a perishable opportunity. The previous interim town manager before this board came into place had actually approached the bank about a deal and had actually negotiated a price. So that was Mr. Anastas. And so this board, again, picked that up because it had stopped, picked it up and moved it ahead because, again, it's one of the pieces of the puzzle.
All this sounds so positive for Stoughton, and we've both been here for a while. The headlines over the years have reflected badly on the town. But during this time on the board, it seems like that you're putting out a lot of positive news. How is that happening, and what's the effect of that, do you think?
I just think that this board works together very well. So we've all come to know and work and learn how to work professionally and collaboratively with each other, really just through our work lives. So this is the practice and the behavior that we manage through in our own working lives. So we don't really think about it, but what we do is we gather the information, the detail that we need. We get the questions answered that we need, the material, so that we can then make a cogent decision, a determination. So the reason you'll see us voting in agreement a lot of the times is because we've gotten the answers to the questions that we need. And if it's not something that makes sense, then it's not something we'll bring forward to something worthwhile to invest in or deal with or work on at the time. So,
can you talk about the process of that? Somebody puts an idea out, then you guys bat it around a bit, and then you decide whether to go forward or not?
Oh, sure. Again, the Randolph Savings Bank's a good example of that. So, we had a large amount of discussion on it. We did a large amount of research on it. Did it make sense to do? Again, we don't want to be in the real estate business, but collaboratively, and again, because Christine Howe, I talked about Michael's role in segmenting out the economic development areas. Christine has the downtown task force, and that included the bank. So she was able to, again, do a huge presentation at the last annual town meeting. It was a 25-page PowerPoint, very, very informative about what that project was, what it would bring, what the ups and the downs were, so that the town meeting could be informed. And at the end of the day, the decision was made based on the merits of the project to move ahead. Mm-hmm. So again, process. You just think about the town manager we just hired. Process. So we did an interim town manager. We posted the position. We did an RFI for candidates. We interviewed the candidates that applied, that had completed applications and sent resumes, and we interviewed them. And we had the good fortune of having Mark Tisdale work for a year as interim town manager. Did an unbelievable job. We owe him a great debt. In the meantime, we did an RFP, interviewed firms that hire town managers. We selected a terrific firm. They issued requests for applications and resumes, brought in a pool of candidates. We had separately set up kind of a blue ribbon panel of folks to evaluate those resumes and then forward to the Board of Selectmen their final 3 candidates. We didn't know who they were until the night that we were sitting there interviewing them. Mm-hmm. So again, we wanted it to be transparent, but it was a process, and we used, the right procurement laws, the right step-by-step hiring practices and procedures, and made sure that we involved the community. And we ended up with, Robin Muxian, who's just a terrific, add to the town. So
she brought a lot of experience too in working in similar environments too. How much has that helped her get off and running?
Greatly. So Robin was kind of a bigger fish in a bigger pond, but here she's like a much bigger fish in a smaller pond. So she was really the number 2 person in the towns of Cranston and Providence, which have populations that are 3 times the size of Stoughton. Mm-hmm. And so she's gotten a great background as the Director of Administration in a couple of those roles. I think in North Kingston she held a similar position, but for the schools, and that was also actually a town meeting form of government. So she got great, broad-rounded experience in all facets of town government. So she's able to really hit the ground running, and as she's doing that, she is learning about Massachusetts state law and things of that nature. But she's got an open door policy. She has a Facebook page. She loves walking in parades and all of those kinds of things.
She gets back to you too when you ask her a question.
She does.
Yeah, that's amazing. I see that.
Yeah, so we're able to funnel resident comments, and she follows up.
What it always comes down to is paying for it, and we're lucky in Stoughton to have a strong senior group that many of those people have contributed a lot to the towns over the years, and I'll be biased here, I don't think nobody celebrates their veterans better than Stoughton does. And we want to be able to help them too, because we realize it's difficult economically for people. And you've had these forums. Can you tell me a little bit about the forums and the programs offered to veterans and seniors?
Yeah, so that actually has its genesis back in the high school building. So we knew we were going to go out for a debt exclusion, and there would be a resulting tax. And sure enough, last quarter of last year, that hit. Simultaneously, property values increased. So, people's tax bills went up. So we'd done this program back at the high school building. There were residents that had come forward to say that, this is an issue with, the taxes have gone up, and, some people on fixed incomes will need help. So we just pulled that program out. I went back and did all the research to update all of those programs, add to the new ones that were there. And then I put a PowerPoint together. I gathered through the town manager, the appropriate resources, the assessor, the treasurer, et cetera. And we did forums to roll out to the seniors. We had about 100 folks, over 100 folks show up for those. And it was really helpful for them, and we've had a number of people that have been able to take advantage of that. We will now do that, incorporate it into our repertoire every year now. So it's not, kind of a one and done. And, those are the kind of things that we need to do to help the seniors and the folks on fixed incomes. But it's something that had its beginnings and origins way back in the high school building.
in the high school building, you saw how presented that was, that it seemed like every question was answered. Whenever you went out, that, the dog and pony show, as people call it, was very, very going on that way. Are you going to do the same thing with this too, do you think, at some point?
Sure.
Yeah.
Again, I think we had a good launch, and we'll just make it better and better as it goes. Again, the more folks that we can do outreach to, the better. So there'll be resources at the Council on Aging. The assessor really kind of is the owner of most of these programs, and is more than willing to sit down with any resident to talk about, what options they might have available. Mike Pizzera, what a terrific blessing he is to the town in helping our residents and our veterans, et cetera. So.
Does that kind of alleviate some of the fear that people have of all the buildings going on and what it's going to mean to everybody? When you get your tax bill, you always freak because it's more than you think it's going to be. But does that alleviate the fear of, like, you're not going to be able to pay for this, or you're going to have to move, or it's going to be a different kind of Stoughton?
We're hoping. So we do have a lot of activity going on. Our goal has been to pay for these things by using I'll say non-taxpayer money, but if we happen to use CPC money, that's really taxpayer money, but we're not increasing taxes to accomplish these goals. And a couple of things: if we don't find grants or state aid, or we don't find a project that is a return on investment, like the Park Street Sewer might be, it'll pay for itself. And if we have to bond or borrow for it, we've been working for a long time on our bonding. We've worked with the rating agencies, Moody's, for a long time, back when I was on the Finance Committee, to meet the criteria that they set. So they measure your economic strength, they measure your financial strength, they measure your management and governance, and they also measure your debt profile. And we, set parameters down. We said that, we'll maintain borrowing at or below our pay down rate. So, if we pay down $3.5 million a year, then we're not going to try and take out more than $3.5 million a year in new debt. We'll maintain our cap. Moody's range is 3 to 5% of total revenues, or not to exceed other certain levels. So we impose those on ourselves, and then we also built the reserves. When I came into the FinCom, we had $35,000 in our rainy day fund. Well, when I left, we had $5 million. And we had a construction stabilization fund for, with another almost $3 million in it. And those are the things that the rating agencies wrap their arms around. And let me just say that, we increased the bond rating twice during that period of time that I sat on the board, following 2 years of recession back in 09 and 10. And to this day, we still maintain a AA2 rating and have since 2012. It hasn't changed since then, but,
Well, Rick, this has been a quick half hour, as always they are when you get into town government. I want to remind people to vote on April 9th, and thank you for joining us. I'm Mike Hardman. Have a good rest of the day.